Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome back to House of Anderson, the ongoing series in the Houselights show, where we are looking at the works of Mr. Wes Anderson from beginning to finish, from Bottle Rocket to present day. I am one of your hosts, John Mills, and of course, joining me on this journey right now is Mr. Tristan Riddell of the Nerd Party. Mr. Riddell, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and this is one of the main reasons why I wanted us to talk about Wes Anderson films on this podcast was Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Fantastic Mr. Fox is the movie we're going to be talking about tonight. But before we get started on that, we want you to go to thenerdparty.com. Look at all of the great shows that are there. If you have a hankering to listen to anything from Babylon 5 to Doctor Who to Star Trek to Star Wars to A24 films, everything. We've got everything under the sun. Go ahead, check it out at thenerdparty.com. If you want to reach us, you can go to thenerdparty.com/contact, look up Houselights, drop us a line. We'll do our best to respond to you on the show or just with a reply email, whichever you prefer. You can follow the network on Twitter at Join Nerd Party, and you can find the Nerd Party, of course, on Facebook and Instagram, because who isn't on those services these days, you kids? So here we are with the Fantastic Mr. Fox, and we started with Bottle Rocket and Rushmore. We talked about Royal Tenenbaums. We've gone through, we've passed our time with Steve Zissou. We took a journey on the Darjeeling Limited, and now here we are with the Fantastic Mr. Fox, which garnered a fair amount of attention at the time because it was basically an animated movie, which is a heck of a choice for a director to suddenly make an animated movie. And so you mentioned, I'm going to hand it off to you. You mentioned this was one of the main reasons you wanted to talk about Wes Anderson. Why? What is it like? Were you super excited going into this movie, or is this a movie that caught you by surprise and converted you in terms of how much you loved it?
No, this one I was excited for, went to the theater, was excited when I watched it, and was jazzed when I walked out. Like, this was, I know that I've mentioned before that sometimes it takes me a couple of watches to really get on board with a Wes Anderson film, even though I count myself as a Wes Anderson fan. It's just one of those things where I have to be in the right mood, or I have to analyze it a little bit. I don't know. But with Fox, man, I thought it was just amazing from the word go. And I just I'm a big fan of this kind of animation style, like claymation and stop motion, whatever you want to call it. I was raised on Nightmare Before Christmas. And so this kind of stop motion holds like the quirky kind of demented, I'm not saying that Fox is demented, but like where it's geared towards children, but the style is kind of much more adult themed than your average animated film. That's definitely my wheelhouse. And I just loved how, even though it's animated and it's completely outside of the realm of what we've seen from Anderson before, this is something that is very much still an Anderson film. The color palette, the shot selection, the delivery of the lines, just the style behind it is so very Anderson. And I saw this in theater, and I can't remember. Have you seen this before?
No, this is my first time seeing Fantastic Mr. Fox.
That's right. I was so excited for you. I'm so excited to know what you thought of this. Whether it's good or bad, I'm excited because we're taking a journey together here. We're taking a journey through Wes Anderson's mind. And this one was, the animation director for this was Henry Selick, who directed Nightmare Before Christmas and also directed Coraline, excuse me. And this was, the cinematographer was Tristan Oliver, who was also the cinematographer on Isle of Dogs, which is going to come up in a couple of episodes. I thought this was probably one of my favorite casts in a Wes Anderson film. I'm kind of chagrined that this is the one and only time that we get George Clooney in a Wes Anderson film, because I thought he did a fantastic job. I also really liked Meryl Streep in it. I think this is the one and only time that we get Meryl Streep. But yeah, everything about it. I love that Jason Schwartzman's character was
Yeah.
like that different kid who like spits for no reason, wears a cape, and I just connected with him a little bit too much. But I want to hear about your first experience watching it. Like, what did you know about the film before watching it?
I knew it existed. I knew it was stop motion. And I knew that I remember at the time the reception to it being very warm. I remember people being very, at least in my circle or whatever. And I want to say that, I mean, I always take ads with a grain of salt, but of course they had plenty of ads where they were like, it's a delightful adventure sort of thing. So I was aware of it. It was something that has always been sort of on the I'll get around to it list. So I'm glad that we did House of Anderson because it's given me an excuse to come and check out, things that have been on the to watch list for a very, very long time. So coming into it, I knew, I guess, what to expect. Because my mindset already is it's Wes Anderson and it's stop motion. And I know both of those worlds pretty well. Like Wallace and Gromit for me is.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Oh, please. Wallace and Gromit is like the be all end all of stop motion for me. I, as old as I was when those came out, my dad, I have to give my father all of the credit for the sort of immaturity that I still enjoy. He taught me the value of still looking at things as a child does. And he adored Wallace and Gromit. And he got me into Wallace and Gromit. And Wallace and Gromit was a thing where he and I would sit down and just watch it just on a lark sometime. He'd have the videotape and he'd put it in. It's like, oh, sure, the wrong trousers. Why not?
Oh, my mom was that way with me. Like we had we saw them on PBS one night, and they had a marathon of all three on PBS one night, and we were just absolutely blown away. We're like, this is so freaking funny. And we immediately went and tried to find the VHS tapes. And she was also the one who got me into Nightmare Before Christmas. So yeah, like I can totally relate with you.
Nightmare Before Christmas was actually a movie I saw alone in the movie theater, which is kind of pathetic. But my dad, just to give you an idea of how I sort of owe so much to my dad in terms of my sensibilities, that was one of his favorite movies. He would listen to the soundtrack for Nightmare Before Christmas any time of year while he was on like a road trip, because he never flew, so he would drive everywhere. And so in his later years, that was one of the tapes that was always in there, and he was always listening to the Nightmare Before Christmas soundtrack. It was kind of crazy. So I fully expected this to slide into that zone. I was like, okay, Wes Anderson, I already know is quirky, and I know that the animation style is something I'm going to plug into. So I was pretty interested coming into it, and I made a point to at least start watching it, and I wound up finishing watching it with my youngest. And just because I was like, she's a kid, so she, would she plug into this sort of, it's PG, I don't care, that's fine. Star Wars is PG. She really loved it. She watched it twice. She absolutely,
oh, hey, cool,
was really. I don't think she picked up the nuances of the idea of, midlife crisis and stuff like that work into it. But I thought it was really interesting because I think that the themes in this, as they explore them, really reminded me a lot about the Royal Tenenbaums, where Mr. Fox is sort of that dad who should be better and more mature, but he can't break away from his immature instincts the way he wants to be versus the way he needs to be. And now it's not a one-to-one, obviously, but I thought the themes were pretty interesting and pretty similar in terms of the way they explored them. What I found really interesting was, I agree with you, Clooney was great. I think sometimes that he's, and the thing is, this could come across as like a backhanded compliment sort of thing, but I think that Clooney gets overlooked sometimes for how well he can use his voice. There's a thing where, as I'm watching this, I'm thinking to myself, I think George Clooney should do more voice work, not because I don't enjoy his live action work, but because I think that he's extremely gifted at just using his voice to convey. Similarly, I'm not the world's biggest Meryl Streep fan.
I was wondering if you were going to admit that on this podcast.
Oh, no, I'm definitely not the world's biggest Meryl Streep fan, but I think that she can also use her voice very effectively. And I think that being able to enjoy her vocal performance while divorcing myself from the baggage of not liking her live in-person performances was a great help in terms of my enjoyment for the film.
I haven't heard anything negative, but like you started out by saying like, okay, yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting. Was there anything that didn't connect with you right away?
No, it's not that things didn't connect with me per se. It's that this is charming. It's enjoyable. It's never something where if I came across it, I would say, no, I don't want to watch that. If somebody said, hey, you want to watch Fantastic Mr. Fox? Sure. Yeah, let's watch that. That's fun. But there's nothing that landed in a substantial way. And just for comparison's sake, we all know by this point how Rushmore resonated with me and how Steve Zissou resonated. This doesn't hit that level, but at the same time, it's far more enjoyable than Darjeeling Limited was.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it gets into that territory of a great entertainment experience. And I guess you can unpack that statement however you want to, but it's like, this is really entertaining, but this is never going to enter the conversation, I can already tell you, of like favorite Wes Anderson films.
I think I can understand that. I can really understand that because I feel like it really comes down to a preference of taste when it comes to impact. Because when you have live action stories and you have something that is normally R-rated, like Wes Anderson films, you can get that emotional gut punch. You can get that suicide attempt. You can get those estranged family members, like cursing each other out, and where we can, and I'm not saying it has to be like an R-rated thing in order to be impactful. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it, like Wes Anderson style, lends itself to be whimsical, quirky, but also at the same time give you an emotional gut punch. You don't always want to do that with what is essentially a kid's film. This is
Right.
a PG animation adventure comedy, and you're not going to get that, for the most part, that kind of emotional resonance on something that is as lighthearted as this.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that kids' movies can't do that. I mean, we've all seen Littlefoot's mother die in Land Before Time. We all shed a tear when that happened.
Spoilers.
They've made 14 sequels. I think we're past spoiler territory.
Coming
here.
up soon on Houselights, House of Land Before Time. Just kidding.
But no, I totally get that. I can totally understand that. I think this one is pure entertainment for me. It's just, this is a warm blanket.
Yes.
Where I feel like you can cut it, you can bite into Rushmore and Life Aquatic and Royal Tenenbaums a whole lot more than you can with this one. This one is just pretty colors, a lot of funny jokes, and just a lot of great character moments for me. It's not something where I just need to think about it too hard. And I'm not saying that as a knock.
Yeah. Now see, what I find really fun about it is that even though this is a completely, not completely different, but even though this is a different medium, animation, if you stripped the credits from this, I would still be able to look at it and say, this is a Wes Anderson movie, which I think is an incredible testament to him as an artist. If you can jump media and still have a mark in such a way that people can know that it's you working behind the camera, that is an achievement in and of itself. And I would say also in terms of the script writing, because I do want to focus on the positive stuff. In terms of the script writing, what I really enjoyed was there were some really clever, whimsical things. In Rushmore, I'll make reference to Rushmore. Okay. In Rushmore, they break the world record for the use of the phrase hand job. And that's their gag through the movie, is people saying hand job over and over again. Whereas in this, it's them replacing any cuss word instance with cuss. And it's really clever and fun. And the whole thing that sort of has it straddle that line so that I can watch it with a young kid. And it's like my parents watching Looney Tunes with me, on rerun television, and I'm laughing at, the character getting an anvil on the head, whereas they're laughing at, a reference to, Southern voting blocks that's on the map behind them or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that sort of thing is what makes Mr. Fox work on the two levels it needs to.
That's really interesting that you bring that up, because that was probably the one thing that annoyed me when I first watched it, was the whole cuss thing. I thought it was overdone. When I first watched it, I thought it was overdone. I thought I didn't gel with it. And so because of that, I was just like, well, we all know what you're really saying. It just got annoying to me. But once I watched it a second time, I was like, no. Okay, I get it. I get the humor. I understand it now. It's something that my wife and I will say to each other, like, you cussing with me? You cussing with me? And I love that, like, later on in the film, you can see graffiti on the wall and it just says the word cuss.
Yes. Something else I like is that the medium freed up Anderson in a way, because he's always known for the quirky sort of situations that people will find themselves in his movies. But this gives him the freedom to blow up the hill and have something with a ton of tractors and dynamite and breaking into and living in sewers and stuff like that. That, let's face it, you can tell that there's a scale here that's hit because they don't have to think practically. This is an environment they can completely create. And you'll roll your eyes, and everybody should roll their eyes. But it reminds me in a way of Lucas hitting the animated media with the Clone Wars. Obviously the ideas are freed up because there's less of a practical consideration. And so in a sense, I think that there's an argument here that we're seeing a freer Wes Anderson than we've seen to this point, which I think is interesting because we have this build, we have Rushmore, we have Royal Tenenbaums, we have Steve Zissou, and we have this sense of scale building each time, right? Steve Zissou goes down to the bottom of the trench and he does it whimsically, but there's still this building of scale as we go. And then it all sort of falters with Darjeeling Limited.
Much smaller film, yeah.
Yeah, everything sort of keeps going, and it feels like this is a reset button for him, where he's getting back in touch with that excessive nature that makes everything work so well in his movies.
I never really thought of it that way, but I think you might be onto something, because like you said, like there's explosions, there's a shootout in that frame, like we have Life Aquatic where you have, huge boats, like one that was, overturned, mm-hmm. and you have a shootout, you have explosions, you have kidnappings, you have, an intern getting chopped with a machete.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then it, like you said, it goes back down. Like it's, I feel like I think when we had Sean on, he talked about how Life Aquatic was super expensive, and but it wasn't a success. And so that's when it came down into Darjeeling territory, where it was just like, okay, it's very small, very cheap. And here you go. This one, Fox, sadly, even though it was critically acclaimed and there was a lot of people who liked it, it didn't really connect well with general audiences, and it didn't actually break even for production costs.
That's really unfortunate. That's really unfortunate.
I think so too.
But at the same time, it makes sense. It speaks to a thing, and I'll call out Disney. Other people call out Disney. Disney spent so long as a company, not Walt Disney, but the Disney company from the mid 80s onward conditioned everybody to think of animation as a kid's genre.
Yes.
And you have Pixar able to break through every so often, but Pixar was, consumed by Disney, and they were doing their own thing. They were an outsider and they were doing their own thing. I think that it's unfortunate, but it's not surprising that something like this has trouble at the box office, specifically because how are you going to sell this movie? You're going to have a substantial portion of parents saying, it's a kid's movie, we'll wait for video, that's fine. You'll have kids looking at it, and maybe some parents take their kids to it, and their kids are confused. What is this even about?
Like, what am I watching?
Right. And there are parents sitting there looking at their phones, probably angering plenty of people like myself who are staring at them saying, I can't believe they're looking at their phones. And so everybody has a terrible experience and has to be has to find its audience on video. Or I'm sorry, streaming. You called me out for saying on home video before, so I'll say on streaming.
Technically, that was Sean, but I did jump on the bandwagon because
did you ever?
I never missed that opportunity.
Yeah.
One time that really stuck with me, that just makes me laugh every single time I think about it, was when Sweeney Todd by Tim Burton came out with Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter. Not all the trailers had them singing in it.
Right.
And which always really surprised me because, I mean, it's a very famous musical. And then so like my wife and I go to see it because we're very stoked. We're really excited because we love Tim Burton and we love the musical. And within the first 5 seconds of Johnny Depp starting to sing at the opening of the movie, I see people kind of turn their heads and like talk to their partners and everything like that.
Yep.
And at least 2 couples get up and leave because they're like, oh, this is a musical? No. And I can only imagine that this happened with Mr. Fox.
2 things on that. 1, I've never seen Sweeney Todd. Leave me alone. 2,
I won't leave you alone.
Yes, you will. I command you to. But number 2, I've gone into movies where it wasn't what I expected, where there's that reset in the first minute where you say, okay, it's this. Never have I then gotten up and said, well, I'm not staying here for this. Who isn't? Oh, like you've already carved out the time. You've already got the sitter. You've already got this. You've already got that all lined up and everything. Who's going to get up and storm out just because this isn't the type of movie I was going to see? Well, shouldn't you at least be open to the idea that it could win you over? Like that's so mind numbing to me because it's like going out to get pizza and they have everything that you can put on your pizza except for, I don't know, just grab something out of it, except they don't have ham, right? Who gets up and is like, well, I'm not having a pizza at a place that doesn't put ham on their pizza. No, you kind of like, okay, let's see what happens here. Maybe something magical. Who knows? Like, I don't get that. I don't get that at all.
I think I've walked out of one film before that I can remember. I've probably done it more than that, but I've only walked out of one film where I was just like, oh, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
I can say that I've walked out of more than one film, and at least 3 of the times that I can remember, my friends didn't follow me.
Oh, no.
And so I had to walk back in. And I was so mad when I had to walk back in because, everybody gets in one car and comes. So like I get up, I'm like, oh, this sucks. And I get up when I walk out and I expect everybody to go with me. And then I'm standing outside like a jerk. And the guy driving is like still in the theater. It's like, oh, well, I guess I got to go back in and finish this thing. So
I have so many more stories, but we should probably get back to the film.
Yeah, let's get back to Mr. Fox. So you mentioned Schwartzman's character. And I agree with you. The son here is very funny, very clever.
Yes.
And
has some of the best one-liners.
Yes. And so many different quirks. I wanted to ask you, in terms of that quirk, the spitting quirk and some other stuff, it's an extension of Anderson because he always has weird quirks with characters. Do you think that some of these quirks are amplified and explored because it's animation and he couldn't get away with it in a live, like, do you think Mr. Fox could get away with in a live action, or do you think that's only because it's animation where that can happen?
Well, it's funny that you bring that up because that whistle and click is a direct pull from Donald Sutherland's character in MASH.
Oh my gosh, I didn't get that, but yes, okay.
So yes is my answer to that question.
All right.
Yes, I do believe. I think it works in a live action film. Yeah, I don't. That's an interesting question. I don't think so. Is my answer. I think it's just Wes Anderson being Wes Anderson, and he's playing with foxes, and I think we could absolutely have seen Schwartzman's character of Ash in a live action film. I don't think there's anything that's inherently animated, literally animated, about Ash that couldn't be translated to the big screen. I mean, I love that he's a kid who has this gregarious father, and he's a little socially inept, but he doesn't want to be socially inept. He is not a good athlete, but he wants to be a good athlete. And I connect a lot with Ash because my dad was homecoming king, prom king, and a star athlete. He like made records on the track team, scored 7 touchdowns in one game in high school. Like it just like,
what is he, Newt Rockney? Good Lord.
like no, the dude was like, there was one time when I was out on a date when I was like 17 or something like that. And we were at a restaurant and there was these 2 old guys behind me in the booth and they were talking about my dad and that game, like that kind of business that was going on. And I don't live in a small town. I mean, like it was 100,000 people. So it's not like a metropolis, but it's not like population 60. But yeah, so like that was my dad. And then you have me, who's this skinny nothing who wants to be a film student and like thinks he's way smarter than he is. It's just, I just had a lot to live up to. And like, you have this father and you have this image and you're just like, like, no, put me back in, coach. I'm still feeling good. Like I tried sports so often, but it just didn't work. Like he reads comic books like I do. And like I did. And it just like, he saw any kind of intrusion on his relationship with his dad as a threat. And that happened a couple of times, like when my dad started talking sports with some other kid who was into sports. I'm just like, hey, pay attention to me over here. So yeah, I very much related with Ash, and so I see myself in live action. So I think I could see Ash in live action. But just yeah, his one liner is just like, yeah, I can fit. You want to know why? Why? Because I'm little. Just there's no reason for him to deliver that line like that, but yet it's freaking hilarious. And one thing that I do want to bring up about the character work, and one thing that I so appreciate with the audio quality of this, is that they recorded these lines for the most part. I think Willem Dafoe and Meryl Streep wasn't able to do this, but everybody else was able to record on location together. So if their character was outside in a meadow, they were outside in a meadow. If their character was inside a barn, they were inside a barn. Like that kind of thing. That's where they recorded. Like they just had they had lapel mics, they had shotgun mics, and there's footage of this in the special features of the Blu-ray. It's probably online, where you see these characters together and like he's rolling, like you see George Clooney like kind of jump and roll around and like deliver his lines. It's not just him in a booth trying to imagine what his character would do. He's actually doing what his character would do. They're just recording the audio.
See, I think that's terrific. That actually is probably why the vocal work is so good. I think that there's you can't discount the idea of that energy transferring, and it actually reminds me of hearing about Mark Hamill recording the first 2 Star Wars radio dramas, where if the scene called for him to be hanging upside down on the weather vane at the end of Empire Strikes Back, apparently in the booth, like he would be hanging upside down, like he was very much into that. And so is his vocal work. If you've ever seen him from the old Batman animated series days voicing the Joker, like you look at it, it's a guy who's performing something. So probably that on location stuff, but at the same time, I can only imagine there've got to be some actors that look at that and they're like, it's animated. Why am I going to go do this? But it's interesting because that sort of energy does enter the vocal performances. So I think there's definitely a plus to that. And what I think is interesting is, let me pose this question to you then, because we're talking about that. Do you think with the revolution in technology that they have now, do you think it's possible that something like Mr. Fox would have been done with the mocap stuff? Because now that we're post Beowulf and Polar Express and everything, do you think we're looking at that creepy mocap? Or do you think, no, it's Wes Anderson, it's always going to be stop motion animation by Henry Selick?
Well, I can't remember if Henry Selick had anything to do with Isle of Dogs. I really can't remember, because Henry Selick left production with Fantastic Mr. Fox. I can't remember if it was halfway through or when it was almost done. But I know that Tristan Oliver the cinematographer, did both. I don't think so. I it's just, there's something that is so classic with stop motion. Stop motion has been around for so long. I mean, since, almost the beginning of filmmaking. And like you have like really famous examples like Jason and the Argonauts using stop motion, and I feel like Wes Anderson is such a throwback. He himself is such a throwback, and you see so many of his films that are timeless because they're set in a different time. Like they have that 70s aesthetic to it.
Yeah.
And I don't see him doing something CGI related or mocap related, because I feel like his filmmaking is so tactile, and there's nothing more tactile in animation than stop motion.
So do you think that Mr. Fox has an added level of success, artistically speaking, because it doesn't go that CG route, which would have been a lot easier and probably cheaper for them to do? Do you think that there's a resonance here? Because I have arguments all the time with a friend of mine. I reference him all the time, both in personal conversations and on podcasts. His name is Joey. And he, like, if I come from a perspective of I'll give anything a shot, I'll give it the best possible benefit of the doubt read. When it comes to CG, he comes at it from baseline of it automatically sucks. Prove to me you don't suck. Whereas I'm like, I'll believe you're doing the best you can, and you have to really screw up for me to come down hard on you, sort of thing. And do you think something like Mr. Fox resonates because it hits that sort of tactile thing that is going to avoid alienating somebody like him, while at the same time, since I'm not particularly picky about what your animation is, it's going to succeed with me in any regard?
I think Wes Anderson knows who his fans are. I think Wes Anderson knows who he is. And we've often talked about his self-awareness, sometimes working for him and sometimes not working for him. And I feel like he is self-aware enough to understand his own verve and his own style and his own place in the filmmaking world. And having that texture, having that tactile feeling, and like using like saran wrap for water, using cotton balls for explosions. And I think the only time he used CG in the entire movie was for the apple juice flood. That was the only time he used CG. And that's the type of thing where you're just like, oh, totally, yeah, I can understand that. I just, it wouldn't feel like a Wes Anderson film to me if it wasn't CG. And I think to answer your question, I don't quite understand your question. Where I feel like, well, actually, I think my answer is, I think Wes Anderson knows that the old style stop motion and the texturizing of it would resonate more with an audience who would actually go to a Wes Anderson film. Now, if he wanted to make something that's much more popular, or something that's much more streamlined and something that would connect with the general audience more, then he would have made Over the Hedge.
Well, I think what my question is like, does he make a decision that guarantees he's not going to alienate part of the audience? Right. We've already got sort of like a self-selection of people who are coming in to see this. They know it's animated. They, arguably know it's Wes Anderson. You have the people that got up and walked out of Sweetie Todd or whatever. But like, maybe I just don't know how to phrase the question properly. But like, he was going to get me with this, whether he decided to do stop motion or CG or whatever. Whereas my friend Joey, he can keep him in the theater and engaged because it's not CG, right? Like that's sort of the crux of my question. And it's sort of a silly question, I guess, where it's,
I think it might be the opposite of what you're, not what you're asking, but maybe what you're implying. I think that Wes Anderson accepts his role. I think Wes Anderson accepts his audience. Like, he's not going to be making Marvel money. He's not
Right.
going to get those kind of numbers. He knows who he is. He's successful within his niche. And like, he has a rabid and loyal fan base, but they are small. Like, I mean, they're smaller compared to, someone in the genre blockbusters,
Mhm.
like a Lucas or like a Spielberg or like Marvel, like DC, you know, like you have like built-in fan bases for pre-existing material, but you also have these directors who have been working for 4 decades and made their own franchises. With Wes Anderson, he's an indie cult director who sometimes has mainstream appeal and access. But I think just the sheer fact that he chose to make a stop motion, like, I think it's kind of like, okay, I'm Wes Anderson. That means this is not going to be, this movie is not going to make $500 million. And so, okay, now it's going to be based off a Roald Dahl book. That in itself is going to knock it down some. It's going to be animated. That in itself is going to knock it down. I'm going to make it claymation instead of CGI. That's going to knock it down some. I think he's continually narrowing his audience because of himself, his style, his choice of medium, and everything like that.
See, the way you're putting it, it's almost amazing that he got funding at all.
Yeah.
You know, like
it lost money, man.
Yeah, why weren't producers kicking him out of the office while he was
It's the same
about
thing that, like, why does Terrence Malick keep getting funding? His movies don't make money. They do not make money, but they're critically acclaimed and they're pieces of art. Sometimes production companies and distribution companies want to get those directors so that they can build up that catalog and use it later on and use it for justification to get other directors to do other different things. It all depends. I don't know.
No, I think you put your finger on it there, just because I think it was Paul Thomas Anderson said one time where the movie studios only called him when they cared about award season, which you could take as sort of a pompous way, but like, you understand what he's saying, where what he's really saying is they don't expect me to make $1 billion. They expect me to get an Oscar nomination for cinematography or sound editing or something like that.
That's exactly right. So well put. You did a concise, like you like
PTA did it, not me.
Yeah.
PTA did it, not me. You know, though, what I find really interesting is, given the fact that, you know, to your point, this narrows audiences and it has such a limited appeal. Like, do you think that this really is something where a studio or the producers or anybody go in and say, okay, you know what, it's a tax write-off. We might get some awards, but this is to offset Avengers so that we can, you know, afford the jet this year because we don't have to pay corporate taxes because we can say that this was a loss.
Possibly. Yeah. I think there's so many facets and ins and outs of corporate financing and Hollywood financing that no one understands, and they don't even understand because they make it up as they go along. So I think that's totally possible.
See, what I want now is I want Wes Anderson to make a self-aware movie about like, I know the producers have done this, right? Mel Brooks with the producers and everything, but I would love to see a modern day, almost like conspiratorial Oliver Stone sort of thing, but directed by Wes Anderson, about this big, like, like The Big Short exposed how the real estate industry was all a big bubble and everything like that. I want to see somebody go into the Hollywood industry. Of course, who's going to fund a movie like that? Really,
I was going to say, I was like, that would be career suicide. Like, if you started like even if you did fake names, like, oh, this person runs this global conglomerate where their mascot is a mouse, but it's totally not Disney, you know, like that kind of thing.
It's a giant wooden badger. That's their whole thing.
Yeah, I that would be fun.
So, you know, I know we're sort of rounding third, as you like to say, but I wanted to ask you specifically about the music choices, the music selection for this, the score pieces that do exist, but also the music selection. Do you think that this is up to the same snuff of your typical Wes Anderson soundtrack, or do you think that he could have made better choices with any of the songs that were chosen?
I think the songs really land, and where like Darjeeling Limited didn't even have an original score, I really like this original score. I think it's poppy and plucky,
same,
and it sticks with you. I think everything about this film feels unique to that film, and like even if you look at it from sorry, I'm totally like disregarding you bringing up music, but no. Like, even when you look at the color palette, like, everything is yellow and oranges and browns, and then when you see Christopherson come in to the picture, he's like he's wearing blue, and like he has a blue shade, and like and you see him like in a couple different scenes, he continues to wear blue. and no blue or green exists in the motion picture, and it continues to show that Christopherson is an outsider, like he's separate from this world. And that kind of feeling of of the use of color is kind of how I feel with the music, where like I love Wes Anderson's picks because it lands the moment. It's never contrary. There's so many times when I'm watching a movie and a song will start playing and I'm like, why on earth was this song chosen? Like, it completely takes you out of the moment. You're just like, who thought this was a good idea? Like, who needed this? Like, who needed the rent paycheck in order to get this song in? Like, like what happened there? Like, I never feel that way with the music supervisor for Wes Anderson film. Every single song and music choice enhances the moment, in my opinion.
Although I can tell you that it's very obvious that whoever picks the music is a big Rolling Stones fan.
Oh yeah,
and they're not hurting for money, so maybe pick somebody else. I don't know, just throwing it out there. It's interesting because I agree with you about the music. The color palette is great, but what's really interesting to me is that the human characters, there's a decision to make them the most realistic looking of the puppets, I guess, right? Like, I was stunned in several scenes at how real the humans looked.
Especially Michael Gambon's character.
Right, exactly. And I wonder, do you think that also helps play really, really well with this? Because when they don't fake the humans, do you think that roots the audience more visually with it? Because you can cheat foxes. We know foxes can't talk and walk and all of that, and moles and badgers and everything like that. But the humans have to hit a certain level of reality in here. Or do you think that I'm off base with that? Because I'm used to humans being more stylized than they were here, whereas here they're more human than I'm typically seeing in stop motion or animation in general.
Yeah, when you look at something that is like Burton-esque, you look at Nightmare, or you look at oh god, that other one that I didn't like. Yeah, Corpse Bride, like all the humans, like if they're really big, they have like tiny little legs, or like they have like ridiculously long arms, or like their jowls are way too big. Like, now granted, we're talking about like Bogus Bunce and Bean, where you have Bunce and Bean who are like one who's like the size of the weight of a large of a baby rhinoceros, and then you have one who's basically a homunculus. Now granted, like, these body types exist though, and they were proportionate. And
right.
So it worked. So like, even though you in animation, you often play with the fat and the skinny and like how they're elongated and short or something like that, but these were body types that exist. And so I think it adds to the menace, and as being a foil to the foxes and to the animals and everything like that. I feel like if they were too cartoony, it might be over the top, because with all the animals, you see them as real beings. You see them as actual people. I mean, like, they put on a tie, they put on pants, they like they brush their teeth, but every once in a while Anderson reminds you that they're wild animals. Like when Foxy is reading the paper, he has his coffee, he's talking to his wife, he tells his son to go brush his teeth, but then when she puts down the waffles, he's like, like he eats it like an animal. And it's just one of those little reminders that, like, yeah, you're dealing with animals here, even if they're wearing suits and ties. And like, he has a lawyer, and I always forget that the real estate agent Weasel is Wes Anderson's voice. Like, that's Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
If you have animals that are human, you have to have humans that are realistic so that it blends in with the world that you're creating. Because I feel like if you tilt it on its head, it might become imbalanced, in my opinion.
Okay. So, two more questions. One, obviously Bill Murray's got to be part of it. It's a Wes Anderson movie.
Right.
You think he brought something to the role, or do you think that it's just Bill Murray showing up because his buddy asked him to show up?
No, I think the scene where he tells him that he shouldn't buy the tree, Like that's one of my favorite scenes. Now,
Yeah,
granted, I don't know
that is
why
good.
he would have that recording of the children singing the nursery rhyme on his desk
Yeah.
just for that moment.
Yeah.
Like I'm not sure why that was there. But then again, I'm looking for logic in a badger talking about real estate. I just love, because we've all had that moment where someone comes to you for advice and you're like, here are the 16 reasons why you shouldn't do it. And I just think you shouldn't do it, Foxy. And then he goes, I hear you. I value your opinion, but I'm going to do it anyway. He's like, you, what a cuss you are.
Yeah.
I just love, like, he just broke. He's just like, you know what? Just screw you.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great moment. And I feel like Bill Murray lends that whole, I don't know the term for it, but just like when he kind of like half-heartedly laughs, where he's just like, the children have an eerie little nursery, like he's just kind of delighted at the eeriness of it. I think Bill Murray delivered his lines in the way that only Bill Murray can. Could somebody else played that role? Absolutely, but I think he made it his own.
Final question. We've already talked about, I mean, basically just in the course of the conversation, it's obvious where we see Anderson. I mean, the very first frame, you see the font and it's like, oh, it's a Wes Anderson movie, and the thing is, what's even stranger is the way that the opening credits work out for me, where it immediately screams Wes Anderson, is the fact that it almost defies logic. Almost every other movie that I see where where the title cards flip really quickly, the background stays constant.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It's like the same picture, but the cards will flip suddenly over top of them. Whereas this is a series of smash cuts, and it's jarring because the farmland that you're looking at like changes with the font, and it's like it's such a weird sort of thing. So I think from the beginning, I want to mix it up with a different question for you. Favorite scene, the one that either makes you laugh the most or the one that you love the most, the one that if somebody said to you, fantastic Mr. Fox, this is the scene that pops in your head.
The apple juice flood.
Nice.
I lose it every single time because I just like when he's giving his toast and he's just such a jackass, all of his hubris comes raining down on him. They all get back up. He's like, what was that, apple juice? That was dangerous. And then Kylie comes out of nowhere and just kind of stares at the camera. Apple juice flood. It just, when you say it out of context, it's not funny. But within the scene, it's one of the most hilarious moments in the movie. What about you?
Well, since I'm a grumpy, balding old man, I think that it's probably very predictable that when the guys are sitting around the campfire singing the song and Michael Gambone's character comes up and he's like, it's a lazy song and it's stupid and you should stop, he just lays into the guy.
You made a bad song, BT.
Yes. And he just walks off and the guy's sitting there like, what happened? As you can tell from my reaction, both times I saw that, I thought it was just absolutely delightful because it is on a level with yet another 70s movie, because of course it's Wes Anderson, so I think of a 70s movie. But in Animal House, there's the guy sitting on the steps. Have you ever seen Animal House?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there's the guy sitting on the steps, playing the guitar to impress the girls, and John Belushi is walking over. He's like, oh, can I see the guitar? And he just smashes it, and then he keeps walking. That is the sort of thing, because I can't tell you how many times I've been in a situation where somebody's sitting there singing a song or trying to sing a song and it sucks. And inner demon inside of you wants to go up and just say to them, your music is bad and you should feel bad, but you don't.
Ooh, I've done that once. Yeah. I have done that. Like I was at college and like someone was playing in basically not it was in the cafeteria, and they were playing, and like they brought out the guitar, and I was just so exhausted, and I couldn't have any more of it, and I just yelled into the ether. I said, "You suck!" like super super loud. It did not go over well.
You don't say. That seems weird. It seems like it would have played well with a crowd, Tristan. It really does.
Good Lord, was I the villain of that story?
It seems like not a single person would have turned around to look who the insufferable jackass was that ruined the moment like that.
Oh my gosh.
Can't believe it. Seems strange.
You're like in your mind, you're just like you had it up to here with it, and you think like, no. I'm going to be the one who says something, and they're going to put me on their shoulders and like march me out of here. It didn't happen that way.
What you're thinking in your head is the line must be drawn here and no further. Right?
So it's interesting that you brought up the font or like the title cards, because saying like, oh, good old Wes Anderson, even though they're done in Wes Anderson style, it's actually a different font.
Oh, I know.
From the other films, which is so crazy that even though it's a different font, it's still him. Like it's like, because these are Helvetica and he normally does Futura. Well,
but it's the weight and the color.
Absolutely.
Right. Like, I mean, it's so familiar. It's, I'm sort of a font jackass at work, because everybody knows that every 2 months I go into Outlook and I torture myself for 15 minutes because I'm like, I don't feel like this font anymore. And I just sit there and I'm like, nope. I'm not bond shrift right now. No, I'm not ready for that. Nah, I did trebuchet for a while. Nah, not this week. You like, seriously. And like people, like all of a sudden my fonts all change and people just know, but you can still tell it's me because I still use the same letter spacing and font weight and stuff like that.
Well, there you go. You are the Wes Anderson of your office.
Terrifying to behold and ponder. So yes.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of drama behind the scenes during the making of this film about how Anderson was directing the movie, because they did about 2 years of pre-production, where they wrote the script, they got everything together, they started building sets, puppet work, building all the puppets and everything like that. It took a while, and Anderson was, of course, very involved with that part of the process. But for the directing of the film, like during production, he did it all via email.
Oh, wow.
Like they did it in the States and he was living in Paris. And so they had the animation director there on set. They had the cinematographer on set. And so they would build it, they'd put it together, and then like they'd send them clips, or they'd send them, dailies and everything like that via email. And if he didn't like a way that something was moving, he would like record himself on his iPhone, like moving the way that he wants them to move, and then send him that clip. And that's basically how they did the movie. When people found that out, they're just like, well, then, like he's not really the director. Like who does he think he is? Like it's Henry Selick's movie and Tristan and Oliver's movie. And I think Tristan Oliver actually did an interview where they asked him about this, like while it was actually in production. They asked him about Anderson's absence, and he said something like, I want to pull up the quote. I want to get this right so I don't screw it up.
Well, we don't want to get sued either.
So in an October 2009 Los Angeles Times, I guess this would have been after it was out. I don't know. In an October 2009 Los Angeles Times article, cinematographer Tristan Oliver was quoted as saying, "I think he's a little OCD. Contact with people disturbs him. This way he can spend an entire day locked inside an empty room with a computer. He's a bit like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain." Apparently Anderson heard that, and like an interviewer asked him about it, and Anderson said, "I would say that kind of crosses the line for what's appropriate for the director of photography to say behind the director's back while he's working on the movie. So I don't even want to respond to it."
Wow.
I was just like, oh, damn. Like, so as I was reading the story, I was like, why on earth did he do Isle of Dogs then? Like if they had that kind of rift. But then later on, like on a fan website, and you'll like this, called the Rushmore Academy.
Yes.
Oliver criticized the article's tone, stating that it made him out to be a villain. And he says, quote, "Yes, working with Wes can be frustrating, but that is true of any director. And I've worked with 100 who were more irritating and less motivated than Wes. So let's just lay to rest the ghost of this particular myth. And it would be nice if the death threats stopped too. Thanks." How insane is that? Like, this is an indie animated Wes Anderson film, and there are people who are so psycho that they're going to go after a cinematographer for saying something mildly irritating.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, obviously they worked it out because, he came back and worked with him again. But at the same time, I it's one of those things where it's dangerous to talk to anybody in an unguarded moment
Mhm.
where people can sometimes be a little more brutally honest with somebody else than they would be with the person in question. We've all been there. You might, when you're having a Teams chat with somebody at work, you might be like, "Oh God, what they got to get their head out of their ass," right?
Yeah, right.
Whereas you'd never say that to somebody, but you got to be able to say it, or you're going to go nuts. And you
I,
are.
I
It,
I've
it
said that
is going
about
to.
people I really like.
Right.
Like I've said that absolutely about people I really like, where I'm just like, man, they're getting on my last nerve. They need to get their head out of their ass. But I would never say that to them because I like them, but I need to say it exactly like you said.
Yeah, and I mean, and I know. So now I know how every text message with somebody that isn't me goes. So that's fine. Um,
I turn
right
to my
back at you.
wife and I'm like, can you believe this guy?
Yeah, and she probably says the same thing that my wife does, which is, "Why are you telling me about this?" Anyway, um, I, it's just one of those things where it's like, I get drama behind the scenes. I get that people have to let off steam. Obviously, they worked it out. I I don't know that I've ever taken up the cause of defending a filmmaker to that extent. So, obviously, somebody making quote unquote death threats. I, even if a Wes Anderson fan were serious about that, I don't know if they could lift the hammer to come after the director of photography. But
I think that's
yeah,
twofold. I think it's twofold. I think a lot of people like the drama of saying they received death threats
that's
when
true.
really it was just somebody shooting their mouth off, and like it wasn't like,
Right.
I'm not saying that death threats don't exist. Oh my god, of
Right.
course death
Yeah,
threats absolutely
exactly.
do. I'm
Exactly.
qualifying it. I'm qualifying it here. Do not write me letters. Death threats absolutely exist, and people do it for no reason and far less than what Tristan Oliver said and did. I'm not saying that at all. But I think that there are people out there who will get hate and then equate that with death threats, and or just say that, and in some sort of hyperbole. And then there's also people, if you're crazy enough
Yeah.
to send a death threat because of a movie, then you're out of touch with reality.
You're broken inside.
You're broken inside. There are people who are sending death threats to the guy who's playing the new Captain America in Falcon and the Winter Soldier
Oh Lord.
because
Really?
yeah, because he took up the mantle and he's playing a jackass. And so and if you're the type of person who does that, then like you said, you're broken, you're psychotic, you're something's wrong with you. No normal person does that.
I could say plenty of things that could get me in trouble with that. But I will also say that if Wyatt Russell were raised by Kurt Russell, I'm pretty sure that either one of them could take me or anybody else in a fight at this. Like, I'm pretty sure Kurt Russell, even at his current age, could probably gut me like a fish before I got a first punch off at him. Um, God love you, Kurt Russell. You're one of my favorite people on the planet, even though I've never met you. Anyway, yeah, that it's unhinged. People get unhinged, no question. Obviously, it's for the people to work out. Obviously, they worked it out.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm really happy that they did, because man, Tristan Oliver's work in Isle of Dogs is just phenomenal.
I
Like
haven't seen that either.
I
Like,
can't wait for you to see it.
We're getting into a sea of Anderson that I have never sailed before. So it's really interesting. This is almost a pseudo Missing Frames, which is also available on the Nerd Party, which you can find on the nerdparty.com or by reaching out to us on Twitter at Join Nerd Party or the Nerd Party on Facebook and Instagram. But Tristan, if people wish to exchange messages with you about the zany bald guy that you talk with on Houselights, where can they reach you?
Well, they can reach me at thenerdparty.com/contact and selecting Houselights and filling out the form. It'll send us an email. Or they can find me on Twitter or Letterboxd at The Insane Robin. That's a great place to talk, and to talk about movies and to talk about Houselights and anything else that interests me. And you can find me all over thenerdparty.com. I got multiple archive shows. John, where can we find you on the internet?
Look for Kessel Junkie. That's my nom de plume online, KESSELJUNKIE. I think I'm most fun to connect with over on Letterboxd. You can also find me, much to Tristan's chagrin, over on Vero, which is a social network, if you didn't know it existed. And you can find me right here. Don't. Hey, listen. For the handful that do, that's where I am. You can find me actually here on the network co-hosting Aggressive Negotiations, a Star Wars podcast of a different stripe. Something I think that if you are a Star Wars fan, you'll be delighted by the ground that we cover on Aggressive Negotiations.
Now, John, before we wrap up, and again, if you guys have tuned out because you heard us talking about the other places that you can find us, you're going to miss this. But what are you rating this film?
Oh, see, I like this. This is like a stinger in a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
3.5 out of 5. How about you?
4, because there's a few things that I probably would trim down or change. I know that we really focused on the positive in this episode, and there's not a lot that I dislike about it, but I feel like there's a few things that could have been changed, or a few things from the human aspects that I think that could have been maybe trimmed down a little to keep them a little bit more of just a pure foil and just a pure maybe force of nature. Even though this was a short film to begin with, I feel like that could have been trimmed down. But 4 is a fantastic rating in my opinion, and I think 3.5 for a film like this where it's just pure enjoyment but doesn't have a lot, to kind of summarize what you were saying at the beginning, where it doesn't have that emotional punch or maybe not a lot of meat on the bone, where it's just pure entertainment. I can totally get that.
I think that's solid ratings. I think we found, especially after Darjeeling Limited, that Anderson he's refound his footing, and he's I'm excited to see Moonrise Kingdom. I've never seen it. That's what we'll be watching next week.
I am really excited to see what you think of Moonrise, because I'm not even sure what I think of Moonrise.
Ooh, see, the thing is, this makes it a wonderful onion. Peel those layers with us next time.
Thank you for opening the door and coming into House of Anderson, but it's now time to dim the house lights.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.